When this project was first presented, I almost instinctively wanted to talk about my dad. No one has been more influential in my life than he has. I knew I wanted to share the story of growing up with him. He was a credited author in my origin story. Me and my dad are very close. I would say we've been close since I was a child. He is a very kind person, very logical. I don't know, he's just a great person, very generous, very kind, very humble, very self-sacrificing, to his own detriment at times, which I have to get on him for. We call at least once a week, every Saturday night. We text every morning. Like, if my parents were good cop, bad cop, my dad was definitely the good cop. He would take me to Starbucks every morning, and he'd get his mocha and I would get my blueberry muffin. So my relationship with my dad changed when he and my mom got divorced. And I always remember feeling more grounded when I was with my dad. He would take me to therapy in middle school. He would be the one to drive me to therapy, and then we would go get like Wendy's or Culver's after. And I remember him we'd just talk in his car and eat, and it was the small things. It was always the small stuff. When I moved to college, it really made me realize how important he was to me. You don't realize how much you take for granted, like grocery shopping, going and grabbing stuff for dinner, just on a whim, just to hang out, you know? It's hard not seeing him every day. But I know that if I moved back, he would be pissed off because he really doesn't want anything for me but for me to achieve the dreams that I have and for me to be the happiest that I can be. But that's not everyone's reality. Dads come in every shape and size. They come in newer models and older models. Every dad is different, and they write in their children's stories differently. There's no one story to tell. I decided to collect intel from friends and family to answer the question, how much of our origin stories do our dads write? I reached out to my loyal Snapchat story viewers and asked if anybody was willing to be interviewed about their relationship with their dads. I also coerced some unsuspecting roommates, a stepmom, and even a real dad to give their input. They had a lot to say.
Keep it real.
If you need something done, he'll do it.
My biological dad died when I was 6, and he was always very gentle, like never yelled. With my stepdad, it kind of took a while for us to build a relationship.
Like, oh yeah, my dad's home, we get to like play and stuff.
He's a great guy.
Right now, we're not talking at all.
Like, the first word that comes to my mind when I think of my dad is Christian.
I don't like him.
He immigrated from Poland in 2001.
We were like the same person, so we butted heads a lot.
He would listen, which was big, and didn't judge.
So obviously there are many types of dads. Biological dads, stepdads, adopted dads, dads who were there every step of the way, and dads who barely called. Dads who texted every morning, and dads who were blocked on everything. We had a mixed bag.
So I live with him. I live with my parents.
He sends a lot of TikToks, a lot of Facebook videos.
I call them every week.
I would always go to his house, play cribbage.
We're texting probably like every other day. We don't phone call too often.
I will usually see him twice a week.
We never call. Like we've never really like called and been like, oh, like what's up? How are you? How have you been? Like how me and my mom do that.
I call him like once every other week.
God, not super often at all, really. I'd say I probably talk to him probably once every like few months.
The last time I talked to him was probably like 2 or 3 summers ago.
I haven't talked to him in a couple years. I have him blocked on everything.
If your dad isn't there, does he have a pen and ink? Does he write in your origin story? To answer that, we have to take it back to the start. Back to the dark ages for some of us, or the early 2000s for others. I asked my interviewees how they saw their dads as children. A lot of people told me about their dads playing very typical roles in their lives and being present and active in their childhoods.
I thought my dad was like Prince Charming, like he was my hero.
I mean, when I was really, really young, I was definitely like a daddy's girl.
He was definitely gone pretty often, but like somehow was always there. Like I just don't remember him being gone very often. Like it always just felt like he was just like a cheerleader in life, just kind of like there at the sporting events, there at like school events.
I know when I was really little, I was scared of going down the hall to go to the bathroom at our old house. So I would go into his room. I would push him awake. I'd be like, "Dad, I have to go to the bathroom." And then we'd leave the door open. He'd stand outside in the hallway, and I'd go to the bathroom, wash my hands, and then he'd walk me back to bed.
He taught me how to knit. When I started going to high school, we would play tennis together. When I stopped playing tennis, he would make me play ping pong with him.
Growing up, he was always at my little league games. And when he was on certain shifts at the mill, I never saw him. There would be a stretch there of over a week where I would not see him.
He was like the weekends is fun time.
Some stories have multiple authors under the dad pen name. My friend Ella only knew her biological dad for 6 years of her life. Before her mom remarried, she only had the memories of her dad to fill the role of father in her life.
He worked at like the power plant, so sometimes if there was like severe weather, like a tornado or something, he would have to go into work, which I remember being kind of like a little bit scary, especially being young. If there was a tornado, I was like scared he was gonna get like Wizard of Oz, like whipped up for the tornado. I remember like reading bedtime stories, like I remember playing with Legos a lot.
My friend Greta also has a biological dad and stepdad, and their relationships were good when she was a child as well. She talked about her biological father.
I remember like being excited to see him when he got home every day and like running to the door. We would occasionally have little father-daughter dates. Go to get coffee and like go hat shopping is one of them that I remember. Because I told him he got a hat that I told him that he couldn't wear after he was 40.
And her stepfather.
He would call me like his best friend and I would call him mine. And it was a really, really close relationship. He taught me how to play guitar. We would play music together.
As net positive influences in her childhood. My roommate Lydia talked about being raised by a father who had many older children prior to having her.
We spent a decent amount of time together, I'd say. He had 3 siblings before I did. He tried to raise me as one of those. I recognized that the way he treated me was more like I was raised more stereotypically masculine, like as a tomboy, I'd say. He kind of tried to shove a lot more like male characteristics onto me. I asked my siblings and they didn't really have to deal with that. He also really wanted me to join the military when I was can you picture this as a in the military?
But not all dads give their children time and energy. Rosie, one of my closest friends from high school, recounted the damage that being around her dad did to her childhood.
I feel like I was always like super scared or had like a lot of anxiety when I was around him. He wasn't like a fatherly figure where like he would accept everybody. Like if he saw something that he didn't like, or let's say for instance like a gay person, he wouldn't react nicely towards that. So I knew that like I had to act a certain way around him just to get like the acceptance that I wanted because he was my father. Right when I was in front of him, I acted way better than I was, rather than like if I was around my sisters or around my mom or around my friends, I would act more of like my true personality, which is like I would like the funny, the outgoing, like the crazy bit.
And my roommate Cherie had a similar experience.
So, as a child, like how often was he in your life? Never? I saw him. I spent one summer at his house, and my mom told me I was never going. It wasn't fun.
Yeah.
I'll say that much.
So each interviewee had a different experience growing up with or without their fathers present. Everyone gained knowledge and experience from their fathers, some learning the value of time, some learning the value of effort, and some becoming conscious of the way they present themselves to the world and to the people in their lives. Childhood sets the foundations and writes the first chapters of our stories. Adolescence comes crashing in to create new conflict and dialogue. New characters enter, old characters exit, but dads continue to pen sentences and chapters along the way. One of my oldest friends, McKenna, moved to Minnesota when we were sophomores in high school. She went 2 years living part-time with her dad, who would commute the 5 hours back and forth.
And I would say like in middle school, our relationship was like a little rough. And I honestly think it's mostly because of like the boys, because like at this point, the boys were like in high school and they were just arguing all the time with my dad. And so I just didn't have like a very positive outlook on my brothers or my dad because like they were just always fighting, which upset me because I was in the house and I had to listen to all of it. I wasn't his biggest fan. I mean, it's hard to say like when it changed because like when I was a freshman through sophomore, he was living in Minnesota. So like I only saw him like maybe once a month. Definitely sometime around that time is like when it got better. Yeah, I think it was definitely hard because, sometimes I just want my dad, and it definitely made me appreciate having him around more. So,
My friend Carly, my stepmom Beth, and my own dad all felt that their teen years were amicable and important to their relationship with their dads.
I think that like my dad, my brothers are older than me, so like I was the first girl. So I think that like the puberty time was a little awkward. I think we spent like less time together because like I was like I would can I swear? Okay, I was bitchy and like hormonal like a teenager. I think that he kind of took that avoidance, like, I'm gonna have mom deal with this today, like, not really for me. So, like, we spent time together still in middle school, but he was more focused, I think, on my brothers. He drove me everywhere. That was the thing, was like, in middle school, you don't have a car. So it's like you can't drive. So the dad was always like driving me places. So that was kind of a lot of our time spent.
My dad actually moved up around middle school. We still kind of just did weekends because it was easier with schooling, but I did see him a little bit more. Like some days he would pick me up after school or take us out to eat, stuff like that.
We both got pretty heavy into shooting, was the 15, 16. We always made time to go shoot. That was our big thing. There would be times that I would want, like at 16 and 17, I would want to go have a beer with my dad. And my grandma and grandpa were always like, well, if you want to go to like Van Boxtel's, we'll take you there. So I used to like once every 2 months, grandma would drop me off at the bar at 10:30 on a Friday or Saturday night. Yeah. And grandpa would come from work because he was just getting done and he'd meet me at Van Boxtel's and we'd sit there and drink at the bar, play pool, talk shit.
But growing pains are, well, painful. Relationships can stretch and ache uncomfortably when new emotions and life experiences are added into the mixture. Mental health is a problem that's still heavily stigmatized in many families. One of my best friends, Maya, described her struggle with ADHD and her father's response to it.
Middle school was bad when I was going through like a really awful mental health experience in middle school and like sixth grade. I was like going through it, and he really just kind of brushed me off a lot, which was hard. My mom told me, she said, yeah, since he's the baby of five kids, he was just kind of taught, you just suck it up and deal with it. He doesn't really believe in mental health. It wasn't until like a few years later when my mom got diagnosed with anxiety, like with an anxiety disorder, that he really started taking it seriously.
Ella, now living full-time with her new stepdad, found it difficult to accept him in a fatherly role.
My mom was ready for a relationship, and that's fine. But like, I don't think I was ready for her to move on. I was like really crappy about it. Like I've said, like, like the direct quote, like, you're not my dad, like I don't have to listen to you, like that sort of thing. Throughout Foxview, throughout middle school, it was like still like all my friends knew like I didn't like my stepdad, like things were weird. When you're like 15 or 16 and you like fight with your parents like all the time. Like my mom and I would fight a lot. And like somehow I feel like my mom and I fighting a lot made Andy and I, like my stepdad and I, closer. Because then sometimes I would like go to him and be like, oh my God, like my mom and I are like fighting, like what should I do? Like what really kind of like solidified things was when I like graduated and I moved out. And then I was kind of like, oh, like I kind of like I miss my parents, like I want to go home. It was like late high school, like early college for us to like for me to like be like, yeah, like I'm close with my stepdad. So it took like like 8 years, 9 years. So
My good friend Vicky had a hard time being authentic around her parents, which caused a rift between them in middle and high school.
He would hate the way that I acted a lot. He thought I was too weird and that I needed to be more normal. Yeah, and he would constantly tell me to be more normal. Or like, yeah, just think of the way that other people are gonna view you when you do things. I'm like, yeah, that's like instilled in my brain so hard. It's like really hard to fight that. I got more weird and they got like they started dyeing my hair and I got emo. I was all like, you don't understand, you don't get me. Yeah, we just didn't really talk. Yeah, I would like be in my room all the time. Right before I graduated high school and stuff in my last few years, I had a really bad falling out with my family, with my parents specifically. We just like started fighting a lot and then I moved out. I lived at the dorms for a while and now I'm in my own apartment and having space between us has like helped a lot. And they think I'm more responsible now.
In a similar vein, my roommate Lydia found that the farther they got into high school, the farther the distance grew between them and their dad.
I think he would get a lot more angry a lot more often, specifically when like alcohol was involved. In high school, it was like next to complete alienation. Like every single time I was at his house, I would always pretty much be up in my room, would only come down for like dinner and stuff. I would never like I kept as much like as minimal contact as with him as possible. Now that I've moved out, I'd say like that's gotten a lot better. Like I would be more open to like texting him and such like that, but we never really developed like a real connection in my like adult years, I'd say. Like I don't feel like I could really talk to him about anything like that's going on with myself aside from like maybe like work.
Sure. They had similar experiences with lack of mental health acknowledgement, but this time with their dad at the receiving end.
He was not a person who believed in therapy. I think he has diagnosed PTSD, but that is the only diagnosis he has when he and I'm speaking very candidly, he probably needs some more looks, but he never really agreed with like therapy at all. He's claims that he's tried to go multiple times and they've never worked. I don't know if that's true or not, or if that was just something he told me.
Additionally, it seemed that their dad had different plans for Lydia than they did for themselves.
When I was little, I really, really wanted to be an author, and he pushed me away from that pretty heavily, which, yeah, I know, right?
That's so sad.
Because it wasn't like a, worthy prospect financially.
Rosie also felt the sting of inauthenticity and an inability to express herself fully, not only around her dad, but throughout her life. Being with her father was an uncomfortable experience, as she puts it.
At sophomore year or like around that period, I would say like it was kind of just like a friend relationship. Whenever I saw him, it wasn't like, wow, that's my dad, I have to listen to everything he says. Like I always felt like he wasn't the parent figure that I had to like listen to or keep a relationship with, because I never like sought out to keep a relationship with him. I just don't like to think about how I like lived when he was around the house, because I don't feel like I had a good lifestyle when he was in the house. He kind of wanted to express that he wanted to be in my life, but I just feel that he didn't want to be in my life for the right reasons.
And my roommate Cherie has a closely related story. Living with their dad was a harsh, grueling experience that set an impression of their father in their mind forever.
So he went to prison, and so like I didn't really talk to him while he was in there, and then I went to go pick him up from prison.
How old were you?
I was like my senior year of high school, I think.
Okay.
I tried to visit him. I would like go visit my little sister while she was there. But like I'm the middle child, and he was just always very dismissive of me.
Sure.
And then I went to college, and then he was a dick. I tried to have a relationship with him, but he texted me and said that communication goes both ways, and that if I really wanted to have a relationship with him, that I would try harder.
Greta also experienced hardships with her biological father.
That's kind of when my dad started dating again, and he started dating girls who are literally, they were my current age or younger, like 19, and then Lydia was 23. I didn't like that. Plus, he was very depressed and like kind of didn't do much besides provide food. In the beginning of high school, there was a camping trip that I went on. And once we got back, or most of the trip actually, I was in a big fight with my dad. I didn't like respect him in a way that he could be my parent and tell me what to do at that point. And then after that, I stopped living with my dad.
But even while living with her mom, her stepdad was, as she says, a mobster.
One of the hardest times that I remember when my views of him definitely started to change. I think I was about 14. Both he and my mom were alcoholics. My mom was baking. I was sort of helping her with that. Tim was having a fire outside. My mom was giving me a couple glasses of Pinot Grigio. And then I would go outside and Tim would give me multiple bottles of beer and Mike's Hard Lemonade, which I still can't drink. He knew that I was drinking wine. My mom didn't know that he was giving me alcohol. I got really drunk. And as it got later, I was like sitting out by the fire with him, and our neighbor came over. I could tell that the neighbor was really uncomfortable with what he could see, like with me drinking and being 14. Eventually, my mom found out, and there was a big fight. That's when I first remember, or at least the time that I remember the most, that he ended up hitting me. It started more of him like backing my mom into a corner and becoming aggressive with her. Drunk little 14-year-old me was like, I can take him on. So I got involved and got hurt. Stuff like that ugly part started happening. It would be like from a month span, and this would repeat every month. So there would be 1 week with the really ugly and either fighting or worse. Then after that, it was about a week and a half of him just being in his room and not talking to any of us, barely coming down to eat. Just, we would never see him and try to avoid him at all costs because it was just really scary. And there's a monster in my house. And then the week after that, it would be like super nice fun Tim. And it started to get really difficult to believe super nice fun Tim, but it still took it still took a while to realize that it wasn't okay to still hang out with super nice fun Tim, even though like we knew the week after that what would come.
I'm not going to lie, I went in with expectations. I thought each person would detail a long, winding story of the relationship they had with their dad, how he shaped them fundamentally as a person, how he was a guiding figure in their life, and how he meant so very much to them. And I was wrong. My own experience had formed my narrow perspective. When it comes down to our origin stories, yes, our dads have pens. They write sentences, paragraphs, maybe even chapters. But they are not the authors. What we do with the knowledge and words that they give us is how we decide to pen our stories. But we learn more than just what they give us. Sometimes we even learn more from what they don't give us.
I don't know if I ever made him proud. I hope I did, but well,
You definitely did. Don't even think otherwise. Come on now.
I know.
We want them to be proud of us, but we should also be proud of ourselves. Even in their various ways and types of involvement, our dads have all taught us something. Whether it be good, bad, ugly, or life-altering, the actions they've taken or experiences they've given us have shaped something, even just one small thing, about us.
Always depend on yourself, or like be able to be self-sufficient, and because like people crash out on you all the damn time, and like you really can only like depend on yourself.
He's fucking weird too. He's always joking around and being loud and like laughing and singing and dancing, which like I do. But don't trust men. Don't judge
And
men.
that's the one.
Realize that you did not have kids to fulfill like your perfect world.
We're very like confrontational in the same way. Like that's why we fight a lot. We have very similar personalities, and I hate it because I do act the same way that he does a lot. And also just like in the way that I don't feel comfortable being like vulnerable with some people or like hugging and stuff is still I'm still getting open to it.
I definitely have my like short temper from my dad. I just get very annoyed easily, and my dad does too. Like he's a little snippy. He gets grumpy, and like especially like around dinner time, he's just very grumpy, very snippy. And my mom said, "Oh, he tired. He tired."
His temper, his impatient, like was a very impatient man. So I think those are not good qualities. But I also got he was very loving, very had a good heart. It was just hard to see. He would always tell me to be humble, to like even though you know that you got it, or you know you're cute and you can. He's like, just be humble. Don't make it known that you know that you are the superior. You know what I mean?
You can swear.
Okay, the shit.
When I hear like news that I don't like pertaining to like myself, I will not accept like that. No, there's got to be like a way around this. I gotta
Sure.
like just like talk to someone or call someone or something out there has got to fix it, you know. It definitely taught me that I should be better at processing my emotions.
To not let things fester and to like really take a deep breath and like think about things more in depth and like how life is affecting you and like kind of know what's worth putting in that voice for and like if something is stressing you out, like say something about it.
My grandma, because she lives in New Hampshire, so we only see her like a few times, and every time we visit her, she's like, "Oh, like you're just more and more like your dad. Like you're so soft-spoken, you're so like gentle and like sweet," which is good because I feel like that's not something that I have to like try to do. So it's like nice being like, okay, like I got that from my dad. With my stepdad, he influenced a lot of my music taste, some of the like things I like to do. My stepdad also like is really educated and like that's a really high value for him, and I think that kind of like rubbed off on me also.
I always noticed that he was really kind to people around him, wherever he was. We teach each other to listen.
How to have a good time. When my man gets drunk, he does the coolest backflips into the pool. Did he have to get surgery on his knee because of it? Yes. Did he survive? Yes.
Now that I look back on that, it's just you assume your parents are going to be around all the time. He was able to look so long term and so high at things, right? From such a high view to make you realize, yes, you're going through some shit or things seem just chaotic, but really just don't take a step back. Because I don't like saying take a step back because that's disinvolvement with this. I like going up and going, you know, really in the whole, looking at the whole picture and understanding it will get better.
My grandpa passed away about 3 years ago now. My dad always reflects fondly on the time they spent together. He shared one story with me that, I think, shows a dad's impact perfectly.
We were golfing at Mystery Hills right up the road. I'm a decent golfer at this point. Not great. Okay. I was probably like 12, 13. I was right in that beginning stage, right? So we tee off and I tee off and I just ding it to the left like 30 yards. Okay. Just sad. He tees off nice and center down the fairway. And we walked, we didn't ride back then. And we walked up to my ball and he starts walking to his. I pull up my 3-wood and I'm like, should I go? He goes, go ahead. You'll never hit it that far. You'll never put it on the green because it would have been a 1 in a million shot. Well, I smacked that ball and put it dead center on the green with 4 people on the green. And for some reason, I don't know why. I still maybe haven't cracked that yet. But it wasn't that he was being disrespectful and saying you're not going to hit it that far. I think what he was trying to tell me is Don't worry about all that down there. You can only control swinging that club. Okay, you can only control trying to hit the ball. You don't know where it's going to really go, how far it's going to go. That's all in the future. Don't worry about that. So I just remember that load coming off me of like that was like the freest golf shot I ever took in my life. I think it really did teach me at that point to not worry about what hasn't happened yet or what could possibly happen. Just do what you're doing now and do what you should do, and that's it. Just don't overthink things.
They enable you to be the best version that you make of yourself. They give lessons and pain and love and shame and all the necessary human emotions that allow us to mold and shape ourselves into what we're meant to be. Our origin stories have our own names on the covers. They're just the references. What we write is our story.
How did the way that you viewed yourself change from maybe the way that you saw yourself as a kid?
I think I'm hotter now.
I looked at myself once. Man, fuck this guy. So once you like went no contact, oh, get your reaction on camera. Liam Payne died.
What?
My cat fell off a balcony and died.
No shit. Hey, what the fuck? Just now?
Uh-huh.
Like just now? What the fuck? Wait.